I never thought a man in uniform could change my life like that. But that's precisely what happened. My handcuff story started as a typical day at work and turned into something that still makes me gasp when I think about it. My name is Alex, and I'm a photographer. Not the glossy type with 3 assistants and million-dollar contracts, but a regular guy with a good camera and a dream. 4 years ago, I quit my stable job at a marketing agency to do what I love. My mom still calls it my midlife crisis. My dad stopped asking when I'd come to my senses. The last time we discussed this, he told me, "You're wasting your life on pictures that no one wants." Maybe he's right. I live in a tiny studio apartment with a kitchen, bedroom, and workspace all squeezed into 25 square meters. My main job is stock photography. You know, the photos you see in ads, websites, and presentations. I take dozens of shots daily, hoping that at least a few will sell. $1 here, 5 there. If I'm lucky, I'll have enough to pay the rent by the end of the month and not starve to death. But fuck, I love my job. There's something magical about capturing a moment, turning the ordinary into something special. When I look through the viewfinder, the world becomes perfect, if only for a split second. I was broke that day, as I usually am at the end of the month. When Mark, an old friend from the architectural firm, called with an offer, I clutched at it like a drowning man at a straw. "They're building a new office center," he said. "I need some pictures from the upper floors for a presentation. I'll pay $500. $500, that was half my month's rent, for a few photos. But there's one problem," Mark continued. "The construction site is officially closed for the weekend. No access." "And what do you suggest?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "You're a master of sneaking into places you're not supposed to, right?" There was a smirk in his voice. "I need these pictures by Monday. Will you do them?" Of course, I agreed. Mark and I had been friends since high school, and he knew my passion for cityscapes. I'd always been the guy who climbed onto the roofs of abandoned buildings, broke into restricted areas, and once spent the night in an unfinished skyscraper to make a time-lapse of the sunrise. It wasn't always legal, but sometimes you must take risks when you love what you do. I headed to the construction site on Sunday morning, armed with a camera, lenses, and self-confidence. The complex was in a developing area with lots of empty space all around, the perfect place to sneak in. The fence wasn't a problem. The builders had left a small gap at the back of the property. A security guard was dozing in a booth by the main entrance, so I slipped inside without any problem. The concrete structure towered before me, 20 stories of bare floors and open spaces, the perfect target for my adventure. The climb took longer than I expected. Of course, the elevators weren't working, and the stairs were dirty and, in places, littered with construction debris. But when I finally reached the top floor, the view was worth it. The city stretched out in all directions, bathed in soft morning light. Golden rays of sunlight reflected off the glass of neighboring buildings, creating the magic I love to capture on camera. I set up the tripod, attached the camera, and started working. Switching to photographer mode has always been like meditation for me. The world narrows to the viewfinder. Nothing else matters except composition, light, and moment. An hour later, I had more shots than Mark needed, but I decided to take a few more for myself. I climbed to the last level's roof, just a flat concrete slab with no railings. It was risky, but these shots would sell well on stock photo sites. Bird's-eye views of cityscapes were always in demand. I was so engrossed in my work that I didn't notice someone standing behind me. It wasn't until a deep, commanding voice cut through the silence that I realized I was no longer alone. "Stay put, police!" I almost dropped the camera in surprise. I turned slowly and saw him, a tall, broad-shouldered cop who was looking at me like I was, at the very least, a serial killer. Holy shit, I was so lucky. Of all the Sunday morning cops I'd gotten, this one, who looked like the fucking cover model of Hot Cops. If there was one, he'd be the face of Hot Cops, 100%. "Good morning, officer." I tried to smile, simultaneously calculating my chances of escape. 0. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" I was just taking a few pictures. "Documents," he snapped, ignoring my attempt to defuse the situation. Listen, I'm a photographer. I pointed to the camera around my neck. I work for an architectural firm. They build documents, he repeated, taking a step toward me. In the morning light, I could see his face better. Clearly defined cheekbones, a perfectly straight nose, a defined jawline, and piercing eyes that sent shivers down my spine. Fuck, he wasn't just handsome, he was a masterpiece. I sighed and reached into my back pocket for my wallet. I understand that I broke the rules, but I can explain. You're on private property, he interrupted, looking at my driver's license. You're violating building safety regulations and putting yourself and others in danger. But there's no one here, I countered, feeling the situation slipping out of control. And I've been doing this professionally for years, and I've never... Turn around and put your hands on your head. His voice left no room for objection. Are you seriously arresting me? For the photos? I couldn't believe this was happening. Maybe we can resolve this less formally. I'll delete the photos if you want. He looked at me without expression as if I were a particularly annoying insect. Turn around and put your hands on your head, he repeated with menacing calm. I gave in and did as he asked, mentally saying goodbye to the $500 and calculating how much the deposit would cost, if needed. Hell, I didn't even know how that worked. Alex Karpov, he said, reading my name from my ID. You are under arrest for trespassing. You have the right to remain silent. At that point, I stopped listening because I felt his hands on my wrists as he put the cuffs on. They were warm and strong, and the touch sent a strange shudder through my body that was entirely out of place under the circumstances. Well, officer, I couldn't help but say when he finished reading my rights. If you wanted to handcuff me, you could have just asked me out on a date. I thought I saw the corner of his mouth twitch for a second, but he quickly returned to his stony expression. Move! He pushed me toward the stairs, holding my handcuffed hands. Descending from the 20th floor in handcuffs was an adventure in itself. Every time I stumbled, he caught me, his hand firmly holding my elbow. And every time, his touch sent shivers down my spine. I don't even know your name, I said when we were about 10 floors away. I usually know a person's name before they handcuff me. He remained silent, but I noticed his neck flush slightly. Ha! So there is a man under that professional mask. When we finally got outside, a patrol car was waiting. The officer opened the back door and helped me in, still holding my elbow. For a moment, our faces were so close that I could smell his breath. It smelled like mint gum. Kandinsky, he said suddenly. My name is Officer Kandinsky. Like an artist? I couldn't help myself. I should have guessed. There's something artistic about you. He closed the door without answering, but I could have sworn I saw the shadow of a smile this time. The ride to the station was short and quiet. I stared out the window, wondering how I would explain to Mark why I couldn't turn in the photos and who I would ask for help. My parents weren't an option. They would use this as further evidence that my photography career was a mistake. The police station was just like the ones in the movies. Noisy, brightly lit, and full of people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere but there. Officer Kandinsky led me to a desk where another cop filled out paperwork. Trespassing, building code violations, he listed monotonously, without looking up from his computer. Can I make a phone call? I asked, remembering that this was supposedly my right. Kandinsky nodded and pointed to the telephone on the wall, not removing my handcuffs until we reached it. I thought long and hard about who to call and finally decided to dial Katya, my friend from college, who was now a lawyer. We hadn't been particularly close lately, but she was the only person I knew with a law degree. Surprisingly, she answered after the third ring. Katya, it's Alex. I have a problem. I briefly explained the situation, trying not to look at Kandinsky, standing nearby, leaning against the wall, and crossing his arms over his chest. You're under arrest for taking pictures? She sounded incredulous. Oh my God, Alex, are you serious? Very, I replied. Can you help? She sighed so loudly that I almost saw her roll her eyes. Tell me the address of the site. I'll be there in an hour. While I waited for Katya, I was taken to a cell, not exactly a prison, more like a waiting room with bars. Having done his part of the job, Officer Kandinsky disappeared. I found myself missing his presence, which was completely irrational. Katya showed up precisely an hour later, as promised, in a formal business suit and with the expression of a professional lawyer. She didn't even say hello, getting straight to the point. "Okay, I spoke to the officer on duty," she said when I was brought in for a chat. "It's not a complicated situation. You're accused of trespassing on private property and violating safety regulations at a construction site." "So what now?" I asked. "I posted bail," she said, looking at me with the same expression she'd given my cat when he tore up her leather couch. "You'll be released, but you'll have to appear in court in 2 weeks. You'll probably get off with a fine." "Thank you, Katya. I am truly grateful. I'll return the deposit money as soon as I can." Yes, I know," she waved it off. "As soon as you sell another batch of fog photos at dawn or whatever." When all the formalities were settled, we were escorted to the exit. I hoped to see Kandinsky, but he was nowhere to be found. Strangely, I felt disappointed. "By the way," Katya said when we went outside, "that officer who arrested you, what's wrong with him?" I tried to make my voice sound indifferent. "He's new, transferred from another district a month ago. Judging by the reviews, she was very principled." She looked at me carefully. "And something tells me that you're not just asking about him for no reason." "Nothing like that," I felt myself blushing. "It's just an unusual last name." Katya laughed and patted me on the shoulder. "Well, yeah, sure. And does the fact that he looks like a model from the Hot Cops calendar have anything to do with it?" I didn't answer, but I mentally agreed with her. Officer Kandinsky really did look like he had stepped out of a glossy magazine, and something told me that our meeting would not be the last. However, I couldn't even imagine how right I was then. After the shit that had happened this morning, I was mentally exhausted. Shamefully released on bail that I still had to pay back to Katya, I decided that I deserved some compensation for my suffering, and that compensation was going to be a bottle of beer, or 2, or whatever it took to erase the humiliation of being handcuffed from my memory, but certainly not to forget the face of Officer Kandinsky. Those eyes, damn it, haunted me all day. I chose the Blue Lagoon, a bar near my house, not too noisy and without tourists. A place where no one bothers you if you come to get drunk in splendid isolation. "Whiskey and cola," I said to the bartender sitting at the counter. "Well, screw the beer. I need something more serious today." Halfway through my second drink, I felt someone sit beside me. I knew who it was without even turning around. Because the universe is a bitch with a twisted sense of humor. "Of all the bars in this town," I muttered, facing him. Officer Kandinsky looked utterly different out of uniform. In a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, he seemed younger and more accessible. But that confident posture and piercing gaze gave him away. "Mr. Karpov." He nodded at me with the same impenetrable expression as in the morning. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Alex," I automatically corrected. "And I can say the same. Does the strict Officer Kandinsky really drink at the wrong time?" He ordered a beer and only then answered, "I have a day off." "Do you have a name, officer?" I decided I had nothing to lose. This day couldn't get any worse. He paused, deciding whether to trust me with such a state secret. "Dennis," he finally said. "Dennis Kandinsky," I repeated, rolling the name on my tongue. "Russian roots?" "Ukrainian," he took a sip of beer. "And have you made inquiries about me?" "Just logic," I shrugged. "And an interest in art. Kandinsky is a famous artist." A look of surprise crossed his face. "Most people don't know this." "I'm not most people," I winked, feeling the alcohol give me courage. And then something weird happened. We started talking, for real, without handcuffs or reading out rights. It turned out that Dennis had recently transferred from another part of town. He loved jazz, seriously, played basketball on the weekends and dreamed of having a dog, but his schedule didn't allow for one. "So why the photo?" he asked as we moved on to our third round of drinks. "Because it's the only way to freeze a moment," I thought, choosing my words. "You know, sometimes you look at something, a sunset, a drop of dew on the grass, a city skyline, and you think, oh my God, how beautiful. And a second later, it's gone. Photography allows you to preserve that beauty, to share it. Even if it means breaking the law? There was no condemnation in his voice, only curiosity. Laws are created by people, but beauty is eternal, I noted philosophically. But yes, sometimes you must take risks for a good shot. And for money, of course. He shook his head, but I noticed a smile at the corners of his lips. You are impossible. You're being too hard on yourself, I retorted. I bet there's a funny guy underneath that tough cop exterior. Maybe, he finished his beer, but I prefer to keep my work and personal life separate. And how does that work for you? I leaned closer, feeling a different kind of tension building between us. Not bad. He met my gaze, and for a second, it seemed to me that his eyes darkened. Until today. I swallowed, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. You know, I said quietly, I think I should make it up to you for being such a jerk this morning. Maybe I should show you some pictures of me, at my place. It was the worst "come see my work" line in the history of pickup, but Dennis just smiled. For the first time all day, for real. I think I should ensure that you are a photographer and not just a trespasser. We paid and walked out into the night. His hand occasionally brushed mine as we walked, and each touch sent me an electric shock. My apartment looked exactly as I left it. Creative chaos emphasizing chaos. There were photos on the walls, books on the floor, and cups on every horizontal surface. Sorry about the mess. I turned on the light, but it's part of the creative process. Dennis looked around with curiosity, lingering his gaze on the photographs. You really are talented, he finally said, looking at a series of cityscapes on the wall. Thank you, I said, moving closer to show him one of my favorites. I took this picture at dawn after a thunderstorm last night. The light was perfect. He stood so close that I could feel the warmth of his body, and when he turned to me, only a few centimeters were between our faces. Will you arrest me again if I kiss you? I whispered, surprised at my own boldness. Instead of answering, he closed the distance between us. His lips were soft, but the kiss was demanding. I felt his hands cup my face, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. My mind shut down, and all that remained was sensation, his smell, taste, warmth. When we finally pulled away from each other, we were both out of breath. Fuck, I breathed out, looking at him in amazement. If I'd known you kissed like that, I would have intentionally broken the law much earlier. He laughed, a deep, throaty laugh that gave me goosebumps. You still have a chance to break a few rules today. We didn't make it to the bedroom. The sofa was comfortable enough for what came next. His hands, so sure and firm, explored my body with the thoroughness you'd expect from a policeman. But his touch was not professional. Only passion, desire, and an almost desperate tenderness. I responded with no less enthusiasm, enjoying the contrast between his stern daytime image and how he was now, open, passionate, and responsive to my every touch. Later, I felt a strange peace as we lay entwined on a couch too small for two grown men. His heart beat steadily against my cheek, his hand lazily running through my hair. You're unlike anyone I've met before, Dennis said quietly. Is this good or bad? I asked, raising my head to look at him. I haven't decided yet. Something like uncertainty flashed in his eyes. But I like it. We talked for a while longer, about photography, about his work, about all the stupid things that come to mind after sex. Then the conversation slowly died down, and I felt sleepiness creeping over me. The last thing I remember before falling asleep was his lips lightly touching my forehead and his soft whisper, "Good night, intruder." I woke up to a ray of sunlight shining straight into my eyes through the loosely drawn curtains. Sleepily stretching, I instinctively reached the side, expecting to feel a warm body next to me. It was empty. I opened my eyes abruptly and looked around. The sofa I was lying on was definitely designed for one person, and I was there, proudly alone. "Dennis?" I called, although I already understood that there would be no answer. The apartment echoed with a resounding silence. There is no trace of yesterday's guest, no note or message on the phone, not even a cup of coffee on the table, fuck. Nothing. Classic genre, fucked and left. I plopped back down on the couch, feeling disappointment, resentment, and anger growing inside me. What the fuck? Am I some kind of minor that someone can sleep with and then disappear without an explanation? You let this happen, idiot, I muttered. You lost your head over a couple of kisses and some pretty eyes? My thoughts were racing. Was this just a one-night stand for him? Or had he woken up and regretted it? What if I didn't look as hot in the morning as I had in the dim light of the bar? Or hell, was he seeing someone else, and I was just an affair? Fuck all this. I resolutely stood up and headed to the shower. The hot water helped clear my head a little, but the residue remained. I deliberately turned on the water, almost boiling, as if trying to wash away the traces of yesterday and the very memory of Dennis's touch, lips, and breath on my skin. Coming out of the shower, I decided the best medicine was work. I would throw myself into photography, editing, uploading to photo stocks, anything to keep my mind off the escaped cop. I turned on the computer and opened the folder with the last pictures taken before the arrest. Despite the circumstances, some of the shots turned out really good. The cityscape is from a bird's eye view, the play of light and shadow between the buildings and the morning fog creeping along the streets. Well, maybe I'll be able to make something worthwhile out of this after all. I spent the next few hours in the editor, adjusting exposure, playing with contrast, and finding the perfect settings for each shot. Work has always been my salvation. When you are entirely immersed in the process, the rest of the world ceases to exist. Even the memories of smug police officers running away at dawn. It was already noon when I finally pulled myself away from the monitor. My stomach reminded me that it would be nice to eat. Still, the refrigerator predictably greeted me with a sad emptiness. I was ready to order delivery when my phone vibrated with an incoming message. My heart skipped a beat. Dennis? But no, it was Katya. Don't forget, you need to go to the station today. Pick up the documents and sign the report. They called me back and reminded me. Better not delay if you don't want problems. Damn. Police station. The place where the man I've been trying not to think about for the last 6 hours is most likely currently located. Thanks for the reminder. I'll stop by after lunch, I replied, feeling a wave of irritation rise inside me again. I could put it off until tomorrow, or the day after. But knowing my tendency to put off unpleasant matters until the last minute, I'll probably forget about it until they come for me with a warrant. And then Officer Kandinsky will have to handcuff me again. Although, maybe the second time it will even be pleasant. Okay, stop. I cut off my thoughts loudly, as if I were talking to someone else. No fantasies. It's just a formality. Come in, sign, leave. Don't see him, or see him and pretend everything is fine. Deciding not to delay the inevitable, I quickly dressed, grabbed my keys, and left the apartment. The police station looked precisely the same as the day before, bustling, noisy, and full of people who looked like they had a million more important things to do. I approached the officer on duty, a young woman with tired eyes and perfectly coiffed hair. Hello, I began, trying to sound confident. My name is Alex Karpov. I was here yesterday. I was arrested for unauthorized photography. I was told I needed to pick up my documents. She nodded without much interest. Wait a minute, I'll check. While she was typing on the computer, I looked around nervously, afraid and hoping to see a familiar figure. And then I noticed him. Dennis stood in the far corner of the room, talking to another officer. He was in uniform, looking collected and formal, unlike the guy I'd shared the couch with the night before. I froze, unsure whether to approach or pretend I didn't see him. At that moment, he looked up, and our eyes met. For a split second, his eyes widened, the only indication that he recognized me. But then his face became an impenetrable mask again, and he returned to his conversation with his colleague as if nothing had happened. And that, perhaps, was more painful than the disappearance in the morning, the complete disregard, as if last night had never happened. It was as if I was just another intruder, not worth remembering. Mr. Karpov, the duty officer's voice returned me to reality. You must fill out these forms and wait for Officer Morrison to prepare your documents." She handed me several sheets of paper and pointed to a bench against the wall. "Thank you," I muttered, mechanically taking the forms. As I sat down, I glanced at Dennis again. He was still standing there, but he wasn't talking anymore. He was looking at his phone. Maybe it was just me, but his shoulders looked tense as if he felt my gaze, but he was trying his best not to turn around. Well, staring wasn't what I had come here for. I began filling out the forms, trying to focus on the information I was being asked for and not on the cop across the room. But the more I tried not to think about him, the more intrusive the memories of last night became. His hands on my skin, his lips, his whispers. "Fuck, pull yourself together," I hissed under my breath, accidentally pressing the pen so hard that the paper tore. "It's going to be a long day." I was filling out the third form when I felt someone hovering over me. I looked up and met the gaze of Officer Kandinsky, whose face was a frozen mask of professionalism. There was no sign of the man who had kissed me the night before. "What are you doing here, Mr. Karpov?" he asked in an official tone as if we barely knew each other. I blinked, coping with the sudden wave of hurt and irritation. "I was drawing up the paperwork for my arrest yesterday, officer," I replied, deliberately emphasizing the last word. "Nothing criminal, I assure you." His jaw tensed, and his eyes quickly scanned the room to see if anyone was watching us. "Officer Morrison is handling these forms," he said dryly. "Come with me, I'll take you to him." He turned and headed for the side corridor without waiting for an answer. I stood up, gathered the papers, and followed him, feeling anger boiling inside. What the hell was he playing with me for? First he disappeared, pretended nothing had happened between us, and now... As soon as we entered the empty corridor, Dennis stopped abruptly, looked around, and, having made sure that we were alone, suddenly grabbed my hand and pulled me towards a door. It turned out to be an archive, a cramped little room filled with shelves filled with folders and boxes. "What the—" I began, but Dennis pressed his finger to my lips, silencing me. "Wait," he whispered, and for the first time I saw something resembling emotion in his eyes, anxiety, tension, and guilt. He glanced at the door again, sighed, and finally looked at me for real. "Sorry about this morning," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to leave like this." But he left. I crossed my arms over my chest. He didn't even leave a note. "I got a call at 5 in the morning. He rubbed his face with his hand. "An emergency call. A murder in the Northern District. I had to come to the scene immediately." I blinked, not expecting such an explanation. "And you couldn't at least write a message?" "Sorry, murder. I have to run." I started writing. He looked genuinely remorseful. But then, I got scared. "Scared?" I looked at him incredulously. "You're chasing criminals but afraid to leave a note?" Dennis looked down, his shoulders tensing. "I don't want anyone here to know," he said finally. "About us. About the fact that I'm gay." Suddenly, many things fell into place. His coldness at the station, his disappearance in the morning, and the current secrecy. "Nobody knows?" I asked more quietly. He shook his head. "I transferred here a month ago. At my previous place, there were problems when they found out. Some colleagues stopped covering my back during calls. I felt my anger slowly melt away, giving way to understanding. Sounds like shit. It was." He looked up, and I saw a mixture of determination and fear in his eyes. "I'm not ashamed of who I am. But in this job, reputation and trust are everything. I'm not sure it will be any different here yet." I sighed, trying to process his words. While I understood his concerns, I wasn't thrilled about becoming someone's dirty secret. "So what now?" I asked. "We pretend we don't know each other? You pretend I'm just another intruder, and then you come home at night and fuck me whenever you want?" Dennis winced as if he had been slapped. "No, hell." He stepped closer, his eyes darker. "Last night it was special for me. I want to see you again, just not here." I looked at him, trying to figure out if he was being sincere. There was something in his eyes that made me believe him. "Okay," I said finally, "but next time you have to leave quickly, at least text." Or leave a note. It's not that hard. He nodded, the relief on his face almost palpable. I promise. He carefully touched my hand. And let's meet this evening? At your place? I paused, weighing the pros and cons. Common sense told me to avoid this situation. Secrecy, secrets, all these games did not bode well. But something about Dennis, about how he looked at me now, openly, vulnerable, did not allow me to refuse. At 8, I said, and bring some food. After today's excitement, I deserve a good dinner. The smile that lit up his face was genuine, the same smile I saw last night before we fell asleep. What do you prefer, pizza, Chinese? Surprise me? I couldn't help but smile back. Dennis glanced back at the door again, then quickly leaned over and kissed me, a short but tender kiss that promised much more in the evening. I need to get back, he whispered. Stay here for a few minutes, then come out and continue filling out forms. Officer Morrison will be with you. I nodded, still feeling the warmth of his lips. See you in the evening, officer. He smiled again and disappeared through the door, leaving me alone in the archives with papers in my hands and a strange feeling that I might be getting into something much more complicated than I had imagined. But when I imagined tonight and the possibility of seeing him again outside these walls and rules, I found it hard to regret my decision. I waited a few minutes as he asked, then went into the hallway and returned to the bench, where I continued filling out forms. Dennis was at the other end of the room, talking to a man in a suit, wholly absorbed in his work. But as I finished the paperwork and headed for the exit, I could have sworn his eyes were on me. And that was enough to make me smile all the way home. I was as nervous as a schoolboy before my first date. I changed my shirt 3 times and even bought candles, which I chickened out of lighting in the end. I decided it was too much. At precisely 8 o'clock, Dennis rang the doorbell with Thai food and wine. A punctual bastard. Hello, he smiled, holding out the bag. I hope you like spicy food. I love it. I let him in. Wine? Officer, are you trying to get me drunk? Perhaps. His smile widened. But today I'm not an officer, just Dennis. I took the bag from him, and he was already standing beside me when I turned around. A second later, his lips were on mine. Softly. Questioningly. I answered, wrapping my arms around his neck. The food will get cold, I muttered. We'll warm it up, he replied without looking up. But first, we had dinner. We chatted about his work, photos, books, and films, and with each glass of wine it became lighter and warmer. It takes courage, he said, when I told him I'd quit my desk job to pursue photography. To follow your dreams even when everyone thinks you're nuts. What about you? Always wanted to be a cop? Not constantly. He twirled the glass in his hands. I first dreamed of being a fireman, then I considered military service. But in the end, I chose the police. I like to protect people and make the city safer. Even if you have to arrest innocent photographers? I winked. Especially these. He leaned down and took my hand. They're the most dangerous. Steel hearts and all that. I blushed like an idiot. There was something right about this ease of communication. It was as if we had known each other forever. Then we moved to the sofa. Dennis looked at my photos on the walls with interest and asked questions. And then, in the middle of a story about my photo shoot on the roof of an abandoned factory, he kissed me so hard that I forgot what he was talking about. Unlike the first time, we were in no hurry. His hands slid over my body with some kind of agonizing slowness. I unbuttoned his shirt, button by button, enjoying every inch of bare skin. When he led me into the bedroom, I felt drunk, not from the wine, but from the desire that filled every cell. After I knelt down and took his tool, I couldn't forget the warmth that started to spread from his tool inside my throat. And then he turned my back, and it was a very bright emotion. Afterward, lying in pleasant exhaustion on his chest, I listened to his heart calming down. His hand ran through my hair, and I felt good. Fucking good. What are you thinking about? He asked quietly. About how strange it all turned out, I answered honestly. 3 days ago, I didn't even know you existed. And I arrested you. Not the most romantic beginning. I wouldn't say so. I raised myself on my elbow. Handcuffs can be very romantic in the right setting. He laughed. Pervert. And you like it, I winked. We lay in silence, but suddenly I felt his body tense. Alex, he began uncertainly, about the conversation at the station. Everything's fine, I interrupted. I understand you're not ready to open up to your colleagues. It's not just that. He sat up in bed. My previous job was really shitty. When they found out, there were jokes, then outright insults. Some refused to work with me, and once on a call, my partner didn't show up on time. Said he didn't hear the call. I almost died. Fuck, I blurted out. This is fucked up. After that, I transferred, he continued. I decided to keep my personal life to myself, until I figure out who I can trust. I understand, I nodded. And I'm not going to give you away. He looked at me gratefully, but then his face became serious again. But that means we can't be seen together, in public places. No dates in restaurants, no walking hand in hand, at least not in this area. It was as if I had been doused with cold water. So we're only going to fuck here, in this apartment? Irritation rang in my voice. Dennis sighed. For now, yes. It's safer this way. Safer for whom? I sat down too. For you? For your career? For both of us. He frowned. I don't want you to be bothered because of me. How long is this bullshit going to go on? I couldn't hide my anger anymore. A month? A year? 5 years? Are you going to hide in the closet your whole life? No, of course not. He rubbed his face. I'm just not sure I can trust these people yet. I need time. What about me? Do you trust me? Yes, he answered without hesitation. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Then why are you ready to fuck me, but not ready to go to a cafe with me? I jumped out of bed and grabbed my robe. Or do you just need a regular hole without obligations? Came, stuck it in, left. No one saw or knows. It's not fair. His voice turned cold. I'm not here just for sex. Then what the fuck do you want? I almost screamed. Just be honest. Fuck. What do you want from all of this? He remained silent for a long time. Every second of this silence was like a knife in the heart. I don't know, he finally said. I didn't plan anything like this. I didn't think I'd meet someone like you. That's not an answer, motherfucker. I threw the pillow at the wall. Do you want a relationship or just casual sex when it's convenient for you? He stood up and began to collect his clothes from the floor. I can't give you a clear answer right now, he said, pulling up his shorts. It's all happening too fast. I need to think. Think about it? I couldn't believe my ears. So you can sleep with me but can't decide if you want more? What a fucking mess. Alex? He turned to me, already half-dressed. I'm not saying no, I'm just asking for time. You know what? I came up close to him. Get the fuck out of my apartment. Think as much as you want, but not here. I'm not someone's fucking toy. Are you seriously kicking me out? He looked shocked. Does it look like I'm joking? I yelled. Get out! I deserve better than to be someone's dirty secret. He looked at me, changing his face from surprise to resentment and disappointment. Okay, he said finally, buttoning his shirt. Maybe you're right. I need to clear my head. You know where the door is. I turned away, afraid that if I looked at him for another second, I would either hit him or burst into tears. Just go away, I said through my teeth. I heard him leave, and the front door slammed. Only then did I allow myself to sit on the bed. His scent was still on the sheets, making me want to howl. What have I done? Was it right? Or did I just fuck up something important because of my pride and fear? A week. A whole fucking week had passed, and I still felt like a squeezed lemon. I worked on autopilot, uploaded photos to stock sites, and answered clients' messages, but my thoughts kept returning to him. To his eyes, his hands, his lips. What could have been if he hadn't been such a coward and I hadn't been so proud? You look like shit, Katya told me when we crossed paths at the cafe where she usually ate lunch. I was there by chance. She was on schedule, like everything else. Thank you for the compliment, I said, sipping coffee that tasted like warm water with a hint of cardboard. What happened? She studied me carefully. Just don't tell me it was because of that policeman. I remained silent and she interpreted my look correctly. Oh my God, Alex, are you serious? You fucked the cop who arrested you? Be quiet. I looked around, but fortunately there was no one nearby. It's complicated. It usually means I screwed up, but I don't want to admit it. She rolled her eyes. What happened? I wouldn't say anything, but the words just came out. All this mess, from the arrest to our last fight. Katya listened silently, occasionally snorting or raising an eyebrow. And you threw him out because he wasn't ready to hold hands with you in public? She asked when I finished. That's not it, I defended myself. He couldn't even say what he wanted. Sex? A relationship? Or am I just a convenient option until he finds someone better? Do you even know what you want? She looked at me as if she could see right through me. You're not the most stable guy regarding relationships either. I opened my mouth but closed it without saying a word. She was right, damn it. Look, I'm not saying you're wrong. Her voice softened. But maybe you should have given him a chance. From what you told me, the guy hasn't had the easiest experience. Since when do you defend assholes who run away after sex? I muttered. Ever since I saw one of my best friends suffer because of his own stubbornness. She finished her coffee and stood up. Think about it, Alex. And if he means something to you, maybe you should make the first move. I watched her go, left in the company of unfinished coffee and thoughts that led nowhere. I tried to forget about our conversation for the next 2 days, but Katya's words kept spinning around. What if she was right? What if I was too hasty in my conclusions? What if... But pride stopped me every time I took out my phone to text him. Let him make the first move if he gives a shit. And he did. On the 8th day after our fight, a message came. Hi, I know you probably don't want to see me, but I need to show you something important. Can we meet tomorrow at Lakeside Park by the fountain at 7 p.m.? Dennis. I reread the message 10 times, trying to understand what was hidden behind those dry lines. My heart was pounding like crazy. My first impulse was to answer immediately, but I forced myself to wait an hour. I didn't want to look too desperate. Okay, I'll be there. That's it, short and clear. The next day dragged on forever. I couldn't work, I couldn't eat, I couldn't even sit still. I was ready at 6 in the evening, even though it was only a 15-minute walk to the park. I changed my shirt 3 times, then decided that was stupid, and put on my usual t-shirt and jeans. I wasn't going on a date after all. Lakeside Park was almost empty. It was a weekday evening, and most people had already gone home. The fountain in the center of the park was quietly trickling, throwing up drops that sparkled in the rays of the setting sun. I looked around, but Dennis was nowhere to be seen. Sitting on the bench before the fountain, I nervously tapped my foot. What if he doesn't come? Or does it come with apologies that it's all over, that he's reconsidered his life and decided he doesn't need a relationship? Hello? I flinched and turned around. Dennis was standing a few steps away, holding some kind of album or folder. He was wearing regular jeans and a gray t-shirt and looked nervous? Unsure? It was so unlike the confident officer I knew. Hello, I replied, remaining where I was. Thank you for coming. He took a step closer. May I? I nodded towards the seat next to me. He sat down, leaving a decent distance between us. How are you? He asked after a short pause. It's fine, I lied. And you? It sucks, to be honest. He looked at his hands. I thought a lot after that evening. And what conclusions did you come to? I tried to keep my voice even, although my heart was beating so hard that it seemed like it could be heard throughout the entire area. Instead of answering, he handed me the folder he was holding. What is this? I took it, not understanding. Look. I opened the folder and found photographs inside. These are not ordinary photographs, but those taken with film cameras and developed in a dark room. They were old-fashioned, with white borders and exceptional depth that digital can never convey. The first photo showed a boy of about 10 with a serious look and a shock of dark hair. He was holding a toy police car. It's me, Dennis said quietly. I'm 9. Even then, I knew what I wanted to become. I turned the photo over. There was the same boy, but older, with 2 adults. apparently his parents. They were smiling by some lake, but something in their poses spoke of tension. The last family photo before the divorce. I'm 13. I silently continued to leaf through the photos. Teenager Dennis is in a school uniform, holding a cup, apparently some sporting achievement. Older Dennis is in a police academy uniform, proud and serious. Then, a few photos with other officers. His first station? I noticed his smile did not reach his eyes in almost all of these photos. And then came other pictures. Dennis with a guy, both young, smiling, pressed against each other. Dennis is in civilian clothes on some beach, laughing and happy, and a few more similar pictures. This is Mark, Dennis explained. My first boyfriend. We were together for 3 years while we were studying at the academy. What's happened? He couldn't take it. The constant secrecy, the need to pretend to be just friends in public. He ended up falling in love with another guy, more open. I don't blame him. I turned another page and saw a newspaper clipping. A photo of Dennis in uniform, headline, Officer Saves Child from Burning House. The date was 5 years ago. It was 6 months after I broke up with Mark. I was completely immersed in my work and became the best in the precinct. And then someone saw me kissing a guy in a bar. The next day, the whole precinct knew. I kept scrolling. The pictures became less frequent. Months, even years, had clearly passed between them. Dennis was thinner, with circles under his eyes. Dennis had a bandaged arm. Dennis was receiving some kind of award, but his smile looked forced. And then there was that incident I was talking about, when my partner didn't come to the rescue. I reached the last photo and froze. I was on the roof of the unfinished building where we had met. My back was to the camera, and I was adjusting the lens. The sun was illuminating my hair, creating something like a halo. I took this picture before I called you, Dennis said quietly. I couldn't help myself. You looked so free, like something I've always lacked. I closed the folder carefully, not knowing what to say. It was so unexpected to see his life and story in photographs. A gesture of such trust and openness took my breath away. Why did you show me this? I asked finally. Because you're right. He looked at me directly, without evasion. I was afraid. I've been afraid my whole life. First, what would my parents say? Then my classmates and my colleagues would say, I'm so tired of hiding, Alex. Tired of being half of myself. He moved closer, still keeping his distance, but not so desperately. You ask me what I want. I want you. I want to be with you. Not just sex, not just casual encounters, a real relationship. But I felt that there was some kind of but. No buts. He shook his head. I'm ready for this. Ready to fight my fears. Ready to open up gradually. Not right away. I need time. But I don't want to hide anymore. Not from you. He took my hand carefully, still allowing me to pull away. I understand if you don't want to take risks. I understand if this is too hard for you or not enough. But I wanted you to know, you're not an experiment. It's not a temporary distraction. You changed something in me, Alex. It made me want more than survival. I looked at our joined hands, feeling warmth spreading inside me. All this time, I thought the problem was that I wasn't significant enough to him. But it turned out he was just afraid of experiencing pain and rejection again. I can't promise it will be easy, I said finally. I have my own problems. I'm stubborn, proud, and sometimes too emotional. I noticed. The corner of his lips lifted in a half smile. But I want to try too. I squeezed his hand. I want to see what comes of it. I want to know you, the real you, not just Officer Kandinsky or the guy I slept with, all of you. His eyes warmed, and he raised his free hand to touch my cheek. May I? He asked quietly. Instead of answering, I leaned down and kissed him. Softly, tenderly, without any rush or passion. Just a touch of lips, a promise of something more, something real. When we pulled away, the sun was almost set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Perfect lighting for a photograph, I thought. A moment to cherish forever. You know, I said smiling, we could make a good team. You catch criminals, I catch moments. And sometimes I catch photographers on the roofs, he grinned. I hope you'll only catch one specific photographer from now on. I winked at him. And maybe even use handcuffs sometimes. He laughed, and there was so much freedom in that laughter and genuine joy that my heart sank. I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't know how many more obstacles we would have to overcome. But at that moment, sitting next to him in the emptying park, holding his life story and photographs, I felt a strange certainty. We will cope, step by step, day by day. And maybe one day I will take the most important picture of my life, our joint portrait, in which we will both be delighted.